Hi everyone, Gareth here. Just to let you know that if you would like to support the production of the Music Room podcast, you can just head to musicroompodcast.uk/support or click the link in the show notes. Okay, on with the show. Welcome to the Music Room. This week in the Music Room.
I'll do everything as live as I can. Even if it's I have mics set up all the time, stuff flying around all the time. You can see some stuff in the background, but literally in the hallway, in our hallway at home is just full of instruments. Every day I say to my wife, I'm really sorry, I'll keep it. I'll put it somewhere.
Hello, Music Roomers, and welcome to another episode of the Music Room podcast, the show where I chat with composers, songwriters and musicians about what they're up to before going back in time to find out how it all began. Actually, I say I, but if you go back an episode, composer, singer, songwriter and musician Charlotte Hatherley, yes, the Charlotte Hatherley, guest hosted and had a brilliant chat with composer Carly Paradis, who on top of scoring things like Line of Duty and The Rising, has toured with Clint Mansell and Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Well worth a listen, that. You can hear it right there in your podcast app or at musicroompodcast.uk. In this episode, you're going to hear from a wonderfully inventive UK-based composer, Alex Baranowski, who's worked on everything from the BBC Two idents and the hit BBC One comedy Staged with David Tennant and Michael Sheen, to the delightful BAFTA-nominated The Windermere Children for Wall to Wall and Warner Brothers. I'll introduce him properly in a bit, but rest assured it's a great listen. So, to music stories. Apple has picked up the worldwide rights to Flora and Son, John Carney's musical ode to motherhood that features a breakthrough performance by Eve Hewson. The movie is Carney's first since his 2016 sensation Sing Street, remember that, which also premiered at Sundance. And just like Sing Street, it too features original songs by Carney and his frequent collaborator and Music Room guest, Gary Clark. Next, I asked the Music Room group on Facebook to share some quick tips with their fellow Music Roomers. Janet Overfield says, how to make your cello or viola sound like it isn't in a toilet. Gently wide dip at around 2.5 to 3.5k and gentle wide boost at around 250 to 400 hertz. Someone here could have probably told me that if I'd asked, but working it out slowly for myself this week was quite satisfying. That's great. Nice little tip, Janet. Mike Langley, you can make a banjo out of an acoustic guitar by sticking a balloon inside and inflating it till it touches the strings. Play with caution. There you go. What a great tip if you don't have a banjo. Ruben Cornell, dip your master at 500 hertz to make it sound more open. Again, very easy, very simple, very effective. Thanks, Ruben. Brolly Man, this week's tip for me is try harder. We can all do that, can't we, Brolly? As a motivational device, I've bought a page-to-a-day diary and log everything I do in it. At the end of the day, I think, I've done 4 hours guitar practice today, and then realise I've been awake for 12. So, yeah. Joe Gendel says, play from the heart and don't be afraid to hold notes outside of their timings, as I'm finding this is sounding more raw and emotive this week. That's absolutely spot on, Joe. Yes, it's very easy to rely on the quantize button, isn't it? But it's much better to play from the heart, isn't it? Absolutely. Robin Schlocktermeyer says, make rules, then break them. Wow. Great little tip that. I don't usually like using presets, but made a point of using some Arturia ones this week. Freshen things up no end. Why not? Fantastic tips, everyone. Thank you so much for those. Alex Baranowski is a composer based in London. He recently scored 8-part series Rain Dogs, releasing this year, and his ballet Legacy Variations with choreographer David Dawson premiered at the Dutch National Ballet in December of last year. Recent film scores include A Gaza Weekend, directed by Oscar-nominated Basil Khalil for Film 4, releasing in 2023, and Ruth Wilson and Jude Law produced True Things, as well as 3 series of hit BBC One comedy Staged, starring David Tennant and Michael Sheen, BAFTA-nominated The Windermere Children for Wall to Wall and Warner Brothers, and Burial, a World War II drama for Altitude Film, starring Harriet Walter. Let's find out how it all began for Alex, and stick around as he'll be leaving an item and a piece of advice for you to find. Alex Baranowski, composer, welcome to the Music Room.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much for asking me to come on. I enjoy your podcast very much.
Oh, that's always nice to hear. Always nice to hear. How are you today? And what have you got going on?
Very good, very good. Well, I'm chatting to you. It's lovely. Very good. How about yourself?
Well, I am probably 2/3 of the way through a kids series at the moment, based on The Wind in the Willows, which is lovely. Really enjoying that. So I will be straight back to that once we've done. And it's that typical mid-series. Once everyone's happy with what they're doing, then it really becomes a kind of a production line, doesn't it? Of this comes to me, then goes back to notes, comes back and on to post-production and da-da-la-la-la.
I like that rhythm. I like that rhythm when you've got themes, you've got ideas, you know what you're doing, you still want to sort of try and do new things. It's lovely.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
And it does become, if it's well-oiled, it does become an opportunity to really hone in on little bits as well. I had some extra little notes, some fine notes this morning. And the director actually wrote to me and said, I'm so sorry because I previously said I was happy with this episode, but I've just noticed this, and this. And I had to say to him, it's fine. It's part of the process.
It shows the director's got a love for it. It's not just sort of, especially with music, sometimes you find people just going, oh, do you need to whack that on, put this on, if that's it. But actually, it's nice for people. I find that really lucky when people actually want to spend time and crafting, because that's what we want to do. We want to make the best thing we can make, right? That's
absolutely, very much
that's what we do.
Speaking of which, I had a cuppa with the Music Room Facebook group this morning,
lovely.
And I mentioned that we were meeting and chatting, and so they have a couple of questions for you if you don't mind.
Of course.
So Reuben Cornell, he says hi, asks
hi Reuben.
It's like a Saturday morning phone-in, isn't
it? Oh, Reuben's lovely.
Yeah. How does your writing process work with surround sound in a theatre environment? Because you've done theatre work, haven't you? You've done.
Oh wow, we're getting
recently.
right stuck into the nitty-gritty.
We are,
right?
Yeah, straight in at the deep end.
Well, I guess to give a bit of background, I'm very lucky that I work in various bits of film and theatre and dance and adverts and working with and theatre is a thing that actually started it all off. When I first moved to London, the first thing I did was meet with some composers, and I met this lovely composer called Adrian Sutton, who gave me an assistant role at the National Theatre on the South Bank. Literally just doing copying of scores for Sibelius and things like that. And I adored every second of being in that building. It was just this, having been in this room on my own, desperately trying to find work, get a job, do a show, and then meeting these amazing people in this incredible room. And I learned about theatre, and this wonderful thing of theatre is where it's not like we're working on a film or a TV thing. You can put a speaker wherever you want, and you can make a sound come out of it whenever you want, and it's amazing. So to answer Reuben's question, surround sound. Yeah, I'm obsessed with it. I love it. I've hidden speakers under seats in theatres and put them in roofs and put them in corridors and put them behind stages, above the stages, outside, on stage, hidden. So you can put them anywhere, and it's wonderful, and it can help tell the story. And the one. Sorry, you were saying you wanted to ask me a question.
Well, I guess the question in that context is: do you actually write in multi-channel?
Well, yes. Way? So a lot of the time in theatre, I'm not just being hired as a composer; I'm being hired as a sound designer. So you sort of mix the two in a really interesting way, and it really changed the way I've worked in film as well. And because you're sort of using sounds as musical, making sounds out of music or making music out of sounds. And if you're going to be writing music for this, it's almost as simple as sort of writing stems. So I want this to go out of this speaker, I will make a stem of it, I'll do this. So knowing, I guess it's quite similar to writing a computer game. Not that I've ever written a computer game in that sort of way, but I guess it's writing ideas. You're not writing a linear piece of music that starts here and ends in 3 minutes. Maybe you're writing a piece that starts in a certain way, and when an actor says a certain thing or something happens on stage, you can make that as a cue, and then the next cue will come along to add another layer to it, this. You could add some sound, and you can just build up soundscapes. There's a very clever program called QLab, which is very Very simple to use. It's actually free to download. It's the normal stereo version, so you can do it. It's yeah, check it out if you're interested to get into theatre. But it's amazing because you can just play audio files, you can put fades in, you can send things to here, send things to there. And it's a really simple system, but most theatres use QLab. And so as a sound designer composer, I will sit in a technical rehearsal or even in rehearsal room before we've gone to the theatre, and I will just start putting things into the QLab onto a laptop and play things through. So normally I'm quite organised, so I did a show at the end of last year called Orlando, which is on now in the West End, I think until the end of February. And I'd sat in the rehearsal room and I wrote lots and lots and lots of music. It was a very big music show and sounds, and we programmed everything really there. So I knew before I went into theatre where everything was going to go. I designed the space, so we had surrounds, we had speakers on stage. I put a speaker in the roof. This amazing theatre. It's incredible. So when you have things like rain, there's a scene in Istanbul where we have sort of call to prayers, and it's amazing putting this call to prayer like through a roof. And in the theatre, sort of, it's not coming out of the speakers. It's not coming behind me. It's really amazing, kind of just to.
Really
you don't really put it in words, and I think as an audience, like probably most people wouldn't really notice because you're in it. You know, if a theatre show's done well, you're just so absorbed into the action, you don't think, oh, that's a nice effect. I do because I sit in it, like we all watch films and think, oh, that was a nice music cue, or oh, I would have done something a bit different. So yeah, I love that aspect of sound in theatre.
Yeah,
use sound, use music, and yeah, it's great.
Fantastic.
Yeah, sorry, that was a really long-winded answer.
That's fine. It's gold dust, honestly. Getting people who actually have a wealth of experience to explain something like that for listeners is wonderful. So thank you. And Ruben, I hope that answers your question.
But I have to say, like, theatre it's a bit of a mystic art. Like a lot of composers in recent years have sort of asked me, sort of, how do you get into theatre? How do you, you just meet people. The wonderful thing about that was working at the National Theatre, which is this wonderful, huge, big theatre. I think I was 25, 14 years ago, and I met so many people, but all the assistants to the directors, all the assistants to the designers, all the assistant composers, we all knew each other. We wouldn't have made films above a pub for no money. We learned how to do it all. And now all these guys, they're directing shows, they're directing films, they're directing stuff. This is kind of how I'm quite lucky in being able to do so many different things, because I guess you sort of meet people along the way and you think, oh, I'll do that, I'll do this, come on, I'll have a go at that. And it's wonderful, and that's what I really loved about theatre, is it just got me out and meeting people, but not meeting people because I'm at a networking event. I have to meet someone, because I don't do that. If I ever go to one of them, I will go to the corner and I will hide in the loo and I will leave. Because that's me. That's your networking style. Yeah, any sort of stuff. I'm terrible with all that, and meet and greets as well. But yes, it's sort of meeting people by accident and saying, "Oh, you did that, and it's great. Oh, should we do this? And let's catch up for a cup of tea, and let's go for go to the pub afterwards after the show." And like it's really amazing, kind of having that little network of people to do that in theatre was my way in to that.
Yeah. Fabulous. Going over to another medium of television, Janet in the Music Room group, Janet Overfield. Hello, Janet. She asks about the series Staged with David Tennant and Michael Sheen, because it started during the pandemic. How did the writing process differ in that situation? Because everyone was kind of trying to figure out how to do things.
All a bit confused. Well, that sort of came about because the director, Simon, he was actually in it and he wrote it. We were due to do a theatre show which got cancelled, and he was a bit miffed about it. And instead of being like everyone else, like I was just kind of sort of complaining about it and going, "Oh crap, what are we going to do now?" He was like, "Right, I'm going to write a sitcom on Zoom about a theatre show that got cancelled." And that's how it came about. So I got this call from Simon saying, "Do you fancy just trying this pilot?" So he managed to convince David and Michael to try this pilot. We all worked for free. Should we just try it? Let's see an episode, see if it works. And this lovely editor called Dan Gage, and we put it together, and it was great. It was really, really good. And then very quickly they managed to get the BBC to commission it. To right, you're off. And it was then a very, very rushed, like, right, we've got to do it. We've got to get this out there, because who knows how long this pandemic's going to last. Like, we might all be out in a week. So it literally got to the point where I'd be given a cut on a Thursday night. I'd watch it and make notes and start writing, and I'd have Friday maybe morning, and I'd get some notes back from the director and the editor. I'd record it live with a lovely bass clarinet player called Ben Castle, who was based in Ireland. It was all done on email
Remotely.
and Zoom, and so it would all be mixed by the end of the night. So have to do literally a whole episode in 24 hours and turn it around and ready for the sound mix on the whatever it was, the Friday. It was like it literally was like it was no time, but it was kind of fun and cool, and so it was just the idea behind it was to make it sound like it was made in a pandemic. Like I didn't want it to have some big brash thing. Like I wanted it to sound like, well, I've got a piano in here, so I have a piano. I think a little quirky bass clarinet. Let's do it like it sounds. It was done in my back bedroom, which it kind of was.
And actually, you didn't really need to imagine, did you? Because you were making it in a pandemic.
Well, exactly. So I just love the lo-fi of it. I love the silliness of it. And it's been amazing how well it's come. Like, so many people ask me for the score to play the piano, so I just put it up for free on Twitter. I was like, great, just like if you want to play it, play it. Send me a video of you playing it.
That's wonderful.
So yeah, it was great. In fact, there was an amazing video that did come through. That was this amazing band of music graduates, and they did a big arrangement of it with double bass and clarinet and piano. And because I was sort of in touch with one of the guys on it, and he ended up becoming my assistant. He's been working with me for a few years.
That's how it happens. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Janet. I hope that answers your question. I've got my own question, because I think I was made aware of you with the BBC Two idents that were, I'm sure, a wonderful experiment in sound design. But what really put you onto my radar was the film The Windermere Children, which is based on the experience of child survivors of the Holocaust at a camp set up near Lake Windermere. Yeah. And the score is suitably emotive. What was it like to write that, and how did the sound of the film come into being?
Well, that was such a beautiful film, and it was really so the film, like, is all about these Polish refugees that came over from Poland to the Lake District, and all my grandparents were Polish refugees who they didn't go to the Lake District, but they ended up in the UK after the war. And it was really interesting because my grandparents were these amazing creative people. My granddad was a poet and a musician, and my grandmother an amazing oil painter, and they really, really wrote and painted about their experiences in the war. And it was so moving to read and to see these paint and to think of it in context, and the film was very good at making that feel a bit more real. And so I put my grandmother's paintings up. There's some really harrowing paintings that she made of a time around there that's sort of half abstract, half figurative, with sort of quite harrowing details that was like, I need to sort of work from this. And I use my granddad's instrument, so this accordion there, obviously you won't be able to see on a podcast, but I've got an accordion in my room that my granddad bought in Italy, I think in 1942. So but all my grandparents were taken to Siberia, and they were taken to Siberian labor camps, prison camps. And the only reason they were released is because Stalin switched sides from, obviously working with Hitler and invading Poland, and he switched sides to the Allies. So he said, right, off you go, you need to go and fight. And they made them march from Siberia to Palestine to Italy. So it really, really affected me thinking about their experiences and the experiences on the children in the film. And I used granddad's instruments, and like I said, I put the paintings of my grandma around the studio, and I genuinely was sort of crying through writing a lot of cues. It was because it was a really emotional experience.
And in a way, adding to their creativity through time.
Absolutely, it's made me actually write more. And I just recently released actually a piece that a Canadian violinist commissioned, called Angel de Beau. I wrote a piece called Spring, which is based on one of the poems that my granddad wrote. They're all in Polish, but my Polish is terrible, so I have to sort of use Google Translate and then get a family member to sort of translate it a bit better. It was the most beautiful sort of, he wrote it in Siberia when, it must have been so bleak, like living through a Siberian winter in a labor camp, thinking, and I've heard his account. There's a recorded account of his on the Imperial War Museum. It's really incredible. And I remember talking to him about it, and we were really close. And he bought me my first violin when I was 6. He had a choir into his 90s. He was an incredible man. Wow. But no, it was really wonderful. It was it was great. Yeah.
Well, with that in mind, because you're actually going back in time with your violin at 6 years old, why don't we go back in time and find out how it all began, if you're ready?
Yes. Wonderful.
Okay, so you mentioned about your grandfather buying you your first violin. Was that the first time that you had experienced music, or was there a time before that that you can
Well,
remember?
so that accordion that I mentioned that my granddad bought in Italy in sort of like in the 40s. I remember him playing it to me and sort of singing. And when I must have been really little, I remember it sort of towering over me. And now it's sort of, I think, oh, that's, but I remember it being this huge thing, this huge special thing that lived upstairs. And every now and again he'd play it. Because I sort of spend my summers with them, summer holidays. That was sort of my childcare. I sort of realized, sort of painting and listening to music. And that was, I guess that was really lucky and like quite unusual, I guess. But they really did a lot in that sort of creativity and just sort of thinking, well, of course we can be creative. That's what we do. It's funny. I sort of see my kids and their 7-year-old comes in and, well, of course that's what dad does. He just does music for stuff. It's what there's no question for it. There's no question that, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, yeah,
It's very lucky, really.
very much. So, what were the circumstances of him buying you a violin then? What was all that
I
about?
don't know why. He was always sort of like, I think you need to play the violin. I thought, okay, great.
Okay.
And I've got it. Like it's a little sort of half size, quarter size little violin. My kid plays with it now. And then it ended up not being the right violin to learn violin on. So I think it's too small for even at 6. It was too small. So I ended up getting another violin. And yeah, just started lessons. And
Did you enjoy that, or were
I
you doing
loved it.
it?
Absolutely loved it. It's only when I got a bit older, I had to practice and I had to do that. When you're 11, 12, 13, like, well, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But by then I'd sort of discovered the piano and I didn't really want to practice that either. But I'd sort of love to sort of just listen to stuff off the TV and try and copy stuff, try and write my own, really loved the piano and discovered jazz, discovered everything. And then sort of do the piano practice 20 minutes before the piano teacher arrived.
Did you transition from the violin then? Are we kind of doing them in tandem?
No, I think I kept playing it until I was about 15, 16, the violin, and then I sort of the piano took over. But I'm obsessed with strings. If anyone's heard my music, they're probably
a little bit, it comes across.
But that's why, and I genuinely can't play it. But I wish I could. Every time I meet people, young composers who play things like violins and cellos, like just use it, because I wish. And I have tried. I thought, what if I just try a little bit and like add it, layer it? Like, no, it's just bad. It sounds like something.
With your piano, then you mentioned you went for lessons.
Yes, so I think I started piano lessons a bit later, maybe like 9.
Yeah,
9 or 10.
Yeah,
but yeah, I loved it. And again, my granddad sort of had lots of instruments lying around, like mandolins and guitars and accordions, and so I just love playing things. And again, sort of string instruments is sort of what I'm kind of obsessed with. I love sort of playing. I've got lots of random string instruments as well, and that's again from that. Like again, I've never had lessons in all these mandolas and all the stuff with electric guitars, but I love just trying and pretending and playing. And then when I've gone traveling, again, I'm sort of went traveling with my wife. We sort of lived in India for 4 months, so of course I came back with a sitar, and again, can't play that toffee. But again, it just sounds wonderful with adding some sort of thing to a.
Yeah, and if you have a basis in something strings like the violin or the guitar, see guitars on your wall, then you've got a starting point, haven't you, of understanding.
Yeah,
and piano, accordion, it's not too far a stretch, except you're kind of pulling the piano apart and putting that together.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all kind of the same thing, isn't it? And then there's this wonderful thing called Melodyne, which makes everything better for me. Whenever it comes to me trying to
billing
play
the production secrets,
do anything. Oh God, yeah. But again, I love it. Like I'd rather do that than try and find a sample or try and find a thing. That sort of seems to be my ethos. So if I'm not doing orchestral things, I'll do everything as live as I can. Even if it's I have mics set up all the time, stuff flying around all the time. You can see some stuff in the background, but literally in the hallway, in our hallway at home, is just full of instruments. Every day I say to my wife, "I'm really sorry, I'll clean it. I'll put it somewhere." But then yeah.
Fantastic. So your grandparents clearly a massive influence on you early on.
Yeah.
Were there, music teachers or other people, perhaps in school or clubs or anything like that might have influenced you as well?
Yes, I guess I think it's having strong people who sort of really love doing the same thing. I remember really loving music lessons at secondary school. I think it was only when I went to college doing A levels. I went to this really wonderful college. There was one very famous composer alumni who went there that I knew very well. I knew of very well when I got there, who was Hans Zimmer. So we sort of went to the same school. And when they did a documentary about him recently, they interviewed our headmaster, it was the same guy, and he's wonderful. He's so supportive and wonderful. And I've gone back quite a few times to sort of talk to students, things like that. And obviously they couldn't get the famous guy to come in. He was a bit too far. But then and it was not, he always asked, he always knows what I'm doing, and it's really wonderful. And the teachers there, they're really supportive, really wonderful. That's kind of really where I really learned Cubase, really learned how to get my way around a door and really work out. And that sort of gave me a love. And I ended up leaving there, and I went to a local Lipper in Liverpool, which is Paul McCartney's old school, which he then turned into a sort of music college, and they did their music and dance and sound technology, which is what I did. So I sort of went and learned sound technology. And I thought, well, do I want to go and do music, or do I want to go and do a course that sort of helps you understand how to record music and still do music, but then I can sort of record my own music, and maybe I can make more money by having both things. So that was my thought processes. So I sort of learned about technology and recording as well as the music, and that was really inspiring. The people on there were wonderful, because it's sort of going to a university like that. And Paul McCartney literally rang up his mates and got people to come in and just give guest lectures. We had an amazing guest lecture from Glyn Johns, who was the amazingly dressed guy on the Get Back documentary he recorded all the Let It Be albums, and he sort of came and listened to our material and sort of drew us diagrams how he sort of invited the stereo mic technique, and just really amazing. Like, we had so many people like that come in, and Paul himself gave us our degrees and sort of came in and did some master classes. So it was a really incredible time, sort of the college and university, those sort of 5 years of being so inspired. And it's not about going, this is how you mic a guitar, this is how you mic a thing. They sort of said, look, these are the tools we have, and look, you can do this. This is a compressor, but it's sort of, you need to figure out how you do this compressor, how you want to mic this guitar. You don't just say, right, you put it on the 12th fret and it's done. You go, well, look, you can tune it this way. You can, you see how resonant it is. Try miking it around the back. Try doing this. Try playing it in a bathroom. Like, we really learned all these amazing, it gave you so much creativity, and that's something I do every single day now.
I was going to say that it seems to be something that you've kind of put your own stamp on and use. I think we both know, as a modern kind of media composer, you need at least a rudimentary knowledge of recording techniques and stuff like that. But to have that kind of background to bring into your work, it shows in your work, definitely.
Oh, that's really good for you. It was so useful. And I think once I left Lipper, I went traveling for a year, went to India, places, bought lots of instruments. But when I came back, this is what I want to do. I want to write music. Like, but how am I going to do this? I don't know anyone. I don't have any contacts. I don't have any money. So I ended up moving in with my then girlfriend, now wife's parents, and her granddad had a house a couple of miles down the road. And this is in Southport, sort of north of Liverpool, nowhere near where I'm from. My mum lent me a bit of money to buy a Mac, and I had all these instruments, and I bought a mic, and I just learned again. I'd sort of learned how to record in a studio situation, and I learned again how to write, how to make a sound, and what my sound was, what I wanted to say as a composer, what did I sound like, how did I record, I literally spent like a year and a quarter doing that 7 days a week, and I was obsessed. And this is the days before Twitter. This is the days before, I didn't have internet access on my computer. I was in this attic. It's really cold, with a gas heater, with a Calagas sort of heater. But it was sort of my little space, and I adored that space. It was my, I had instruments, computer, and it was just about learning my craft. Yeah. And it was the best year I've ever had for myself, my career, like learning what I do, like figuring out how I do it and figuring out what plugins do. And I went over to Pro Tools when I was at Lipper and learned sort of Pro Tools, and then that's how I still use Pro Tools now. Sort of, I wanted to just figure out how I could make things sound great, and then I sort of bought some. I think it was the original East West Gold library, which of course they had no legato things in those days. They had nothing like them. And it was just, I just spent my time obsessing. How do I make this sound real? How do I make this string sound interesting with adding some guitars, adding some pianos, what can I do? And I completely obsessed, and I ended up putting music on MySpace, I think. And I got people sort of contacting me saying, "Oh, can you do this film?" I say film, it was student film
Yeah, yeah.
stuff. So then I learned, made all the mistakes on a student film, and like I had the best time ever. I loved it. And, no money involved. I didn't even think about that, but it was, yeah, like I say, it was the best. And I know I know I'm saying this from an immensely middle class white male privileged position to be in this, because I know a lot of people don't have the opportunity to go and spend a year living on someone else's dime without having to, after, like, it's a really, really privileged position to be in, and I completely understand that. And I can understand why, having done that, why it's so difficult for people who aren't able to afford to do that to get in this, because it is this kind of industry where, as we all know, listen to this, however little or long we've all done this thing, it takes so much graft to do this. Like, no one comes in, he goes, "Oh, great, you do music now, you've done it, great, do you want to come and do this?" Like, it is. But that's what's kind of wonderful about it. And it's about learning and learning and learning. And even in my 20s, I thought, "Oh, I can score films now, I've been doing this for a few years." And it's looking back now, like, there's so much I know now that I didn't know then, that you're learning all the time. And I'm sure in 10 years time, I'll look back at what I'm doing now and think, "Oh, you were so naive." It's about learning all the time.
Yeah. But then if you go into it knowing what you're in for, I'm not sure many people would actually decide to go ahead.
No,
for me, it was totally unexpected, the amount of graft and the amount you have to really dig deep and think, is this really what I want?
I completely agree. And we all have many moments like that. And I remember, thinking that now, like, it really affected, mental health, when you sort of go up for jobs and you don't get them with this, and it's frustrating because then you move to London and you can't pay the rent. Like, it's just so hard. And then, you maybe find a way out. I'll pitch for this advert. If I get this advert, it'll literally pay my rent for 3 months. And then you don't get it, and you just, all you can think about is not being able to pay your rent for 2 months. And so it's a really, really hard thing. And you can see why everyone struggles, because we all struggle. And it's, what's really bad, you sort of look at other people and you compare yourself with them and you think, "Why, it all looks so easy." And even sometimes I look at my own terrible website and go, "God, it looks quite impressive, actually." I mean, but it doesn't feel like that when you do it. But everything looks better on the outside, and I think you need to remember that. And I remember sort of being in studios and seeing composers who were many rungs above me and working on these incredible films, and it's sort of being satisfying that they're having a really hard, difficult time. Okay, great. Like, I always imagined it'd be easy and you just be drinking coffee and getting assistants to help, but actually it's not. It's a hard graft the whole way through, and that's okay, as long as we know that. I think it's not about taking your eye off the ball. There's never a moment you can just go, "Yeah, I'm done now." Just keep
exactly. And there's a massive responsibility on your shoulders, isn't it? You get into a position where you think, "Yes, I've got a gig, I've got a commission," and then you're responsible. You are. Then the sleepless nights start, because, oh God, you've got to get everything right.
Absolutely. And it's not something, I think again, and I'm guilty of it. I know when I was younger, but I think when you're as a young composer, you sort of you think, "Well, I know I can do this. Why aren't I doing this?" But you think about it, like, you're, as a composer for a film, it's the equivalent of being a CEO of a multi-million pound project, or a head of department of a very very big, you're this just writing music is, in charge of hundreds of thousands of pounds of budget to go to orchestras. It takes so much experience and knowledge, and no one gets given a CEO job when they're in their 20s. And if they are, God help you, because it's about working on those smaller projects, isn't it, and learning and figuring it all out. And as they get bigger and they get bigger, and you go with it.
So, not to end on a despairing note, I ask all of my guests to leave an item and a piece of advice in the Music Room for others to find. So, have you got an item that you'd like to leave in the Music Room?
So I was thinking about this, and I was listening to what other people left behind. And I was thinking, so one of the most useful things is a little black book. And in that little black book is people. And it's not my people. I'm not giving you a black book full of people. I'm giving you a black book for you to fill with your people, because I think what you do is all about people. Like we sit in our little rooms on our own most of the time, and we write. We want stuff to come to us, but it doesn't. You know, we have to go out and do it. And I love writing music. I love getting musicians to play and collaborate with. And so I have a lovely group of people now that I sort of like. But even at the moment, I'm sort of like ringing up people saying, "Can you put some cello on this? Can you do this? Can you write? You know, can you help me with this? Can you do some Sibelius things on this while I'm doing it?" And directors and people, like I said, that you meet assistants when you're really young, and they end up becoming their own directors. And I was sort of started when Facebook was really just in its infancy, from for the masses like us. I remember, before Twitter, and I remember sort of being recontacted with all these people from A levels in school and going, "Oh, you work at the BBC now, can I ever do it?"
Yeah.
And now we're even more connected, I guess. So in Twitter, I ended up getting some wonderful work and meeting wonderful people on Twitter. I guess it's just about connections and not being on your own, and having a little book that reminds you of all that. It doesn't have to be a physical. It can be in your head. It can be in your phone.
No, it's a physical black book.
And in that black book, and to be fair, there's a little black book of people that have not been particularly pleasant, or not be, I've been very lucky that I've had a lot of positive experiences, and there's been a few negative experiences, but whether it's people working with, whether it's a musician being a complete arse about something, or it's about this, or it's about, no one's gonna, I want to try and be as fair and wonderful and you want to be with everyone, but it's you want to surround people with, you be positive, and it's about trying to figure out a way through it.
Fantastic. Well, that's going in. What advice would you like to leave in the music room?
So I might have sort of said it before, but I think the biggest bit of advice is not comparing. There's a wonderful quote. I don't know who said it, so I'm sorry it's not mine. But like, don't compare your beginning with someone else's middle. Like, don't look at other people and think, why am I not doing that? Why am I not doing this? Why am I, like, don't think, I'm young. I need to get an agent. I need to do this. Like, you need to, you don't. You just need to keep going and meeting people and finding avenues to write music, whether it's above a pub, whether it's just writing some library music, whether it's pitching for some adverts, whether it's doing some theatre, whether it's doing a low budget doc, doing a dance piece. Like, I did it all. That's how I guess I'm so lucky to work in so many different avenues now, is because when I was a young composer, I just wanted to meet as many people as I could. So I met choreographers, I met documentary makers and theatre makers, and I just wanted to make as many connections as possible. I was very lucky. I had income by doing a theatre job or getting the odd advert pitch and doing it. You sort of grab your incomes from otherwhere or do other jobs. And so so that's what my advice. It's about trying to be you, and it's not trying to of course we get influences from here, there, and everywhere, but figure out who you are. I always have this horrible analogy, which I always say to young composers, and there's two types of composers. There's one type of composer, like, oh god, we need to get someone to do some music, like you're great, done. Well, there's other side where you go, okay, I really like what you do, and I want you to come and do this because I really love what you've done. And I think we all start in the first one, we all start and just, I want to be a composer, but the aim is sort of get onto that side. People want to come to you, and the only way of doing that is by being you, not trying to copy someone, not trying to do this, like try and just figure out your own way of getting through stuff.
Alex Baranowski, composer, it has been a joy chatting with you. Thanks for joining me in the music room.
Thank you very much for asking.